Hey everyone, and welcome back. In the last few videos, we've been taking a look at one of Photoshop's more mysterious features, Content Aware. Adobe has been able to implement this technology in a variety of tools to help give you better results and to cut down on editing time. This year with Photoshop CS6, Adobe has stepped up their game, giving us a new Content Aware option within the Patch tool, and we saw the addition of the Content Aware Move tool, a fantastic new tool that allows you to magically move and extend objects within your images. Let's start by taking a look at the improved Patch tool. Going back to the image that contained my shadow, if you remember in the last video when I tried to use Content Aware Fill, because the selection came so close to the crosswalk, Photoshop threw in some unexpected textures into the final result. In previous versions of Photoshop, your next best bet would be either the clone stamp or the Patch tool. The clone stamp would require a little bit extra work, but the Patch tool may give you decent results much quicker. Let's give that a shot first. When you select your Patch tool from the tools bar on the left, just like many of your other tools, there are options available to you on the options bar, including which patching method you want to use, normal or Content Aware. Let's give normal a shot first. If you've never used the Patch tool before, the selection method works just like your standard lasso tool, where you can trace around your subject in a freehand fashion. Now, once a selection has been made, you want to drag that selection to an area that you'd like to sample. For this example, as I'm looking to replace the shadow with the texture of the bricks, I would simply drag the selection to a cleaner area. Photoshop will then grab that texture and place it where your selection once was, and attempt to blend it in seamlessly. The result isn't too bad, but you might notice a bit of darkness at the bottom. Nothing major, but let's back up and try the new Content Aware option to see how it stacks up. You may notice that when I select the new Content Aware option, an adaptation setting appears to the right. In short, there are 5 different adaptation settings, ranging from very loose to very strict, and they control how much flexibility Photoshop has with its blending. Very strict will typically perform very little blending, while very loose tends to blend the edges quite a bit more. Let's try out very loose to see how the results turn out. Just like before, I can drag my selection to a clean area of the photo, and Photoshop will perform the edit. And that looks like it did a pretty decent job. Of course, when working with the Content Aware Patch tool, if the result didn't turn out that great, try out a different adaptation setting. They may provide better results. Let's look at one more example of the Patch tool with Content Aware. In this photo taken at Disney, I'm quite happy with the overall photo, except the bottom right corner. A bunch of trees and some leaves have ruined my photo. Let's first try out Content Aware Fill. I'm going to grab my standard lasso tool and draw a quick selection around the cluster that I don't want. Once I have my selection made, Shift Delete or Shift Backspace to bring up the Fill dialog box. Here we want to make sure to select Content Aware from the dropdown. When we press OK, Photoshop will start to analyze the information around the selection and do its best to create an acceptable result. Now, while it works well in some cases, in this case, because our selection is so close to the castle, our result isn't exactly what we were expecting. Let's switch back over to the Patch tool with Content Aware enabled. Now, instead of Photoshop deciding what will be sampled, we get to boss Photoshop around a little bit. I can simply drag my selection to the area that I want Photoshop to sample, and once it's complete, you're going to notice the result is near perfect. Let's move on to the Content Aware Move tool, which allows you to move and extend objects in your photo. This new tool can be found with the other healing tools in the tools bar. Let me show you what it can do. The first option that this tool includes is Move. I'm sure you can guess what this does, but to demonstrate it, let's take a look at this image of kangaroos. The kangaroo on the bottom of this image looks way too lonely over there by himself. Let's move him closer to his friends at the top. Just like the Patch tool, I can create a freehand selection around the kangaroo, making sure to outline the whole object. When using the Content Aware Move tool, you want to make sure to leave a little bit of room around the edges of your object to give Photoshop some extra breathing room when it's time to blend your object with its new background. Now, on our options bar, we want to set our adaptation setting. Because we're dealing with a pretty bland texture, let's choose very loose for this example. Once your settings are in place, drag the selection to its new location. Photoshop will not only move the kangaroo to its new location, but it's also going to remove the old one, doing its best to keep the result as natural looking as possible. And again, if you find that the edges didn't blend well with your background, undo and try a different adaptation setting. The second option is Extend. This can be really useful if you're trying to shrink or extend the length of an object, such as a building or even an animal. In this image of a lion, let's say I wanted to increase the size of this guy. With the ContentAwareMove tool, I'm able to draw out a selection around the area that I want to extend. Again, when making my selection, I'm going to make sure to leave a little bit of room around the edges of my subject, so Photoshop has something to work with when blending. Now before I start moving my selection, I'm going to set my adaptation setting at loose for this example. This should give me a nice blend, especially over the lion's body. Now when I drag my selection, I'm going to do my best to line up the crucial lines of the subject, but we don't have to be 100% accurate. You're going to notice that when I release my mouse, Photoshop will process the move and blend the two sections quite well together. Now we have a longer lion, but he's way too skinny. Let's go ahead and fatten him up. With the ContentAwareMove tool still active, I'm going to draw a selection around the lion's midsection, including a bit of his legs. This time for the adaptation, I'm going to set it at strict. This will ensure that the transition under the lion's midsection remains pretty crisp. Dragging the selection down will add some extra weight to our lion. Here's what we started with, and here's our end result. Pretty cool if you ask me. And that concludes our series on Content Aware. In the last few videos, we took a look at Content Aware Scale, Content Aware Fill, the Spot Healing Brush with Content Aware, the Patch tool with Content Aware, and the Content Aware Move tool. That's a lot of Content Aware, and who knows what Adobe will throw at us next. We'll see you in the next video.